feel supercharged now.
Hello guys, I'm out scrambling today, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to basically go through what have I got in my bag, why, if you're getting into scrambling, what should you have in your bag and why. Let's get down to it. So I've just had another fantastic summer of adventures. I've bagged a few new scrambles and reattempted some old favourites. Unfortunately, I'm back at work now, bit sad it's all over, but I thought I'd bring you this video anyway, and it's going to be a simple one today. It's what I take summer scrambling and why. Specifically, we're talking about grade 1 and 2 routes today. So, no ropes and hardware, we can save that for a future video. If you're not sure what I mean by scrambling grades, check out my intro to scrambling video, that should bring you up to speed. It's actually my second attempt at this. I tried to do it in a walk and talk format, but it ended up being so flipping long. So I'm going to do my absolute best to keep this concise. I won't be expanding on anything too much, so if you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I'm sure me or another fellow mountaineer will get back to you. Before we talk about what's actually in the bag, let's talk about bags themselves. On a grade 1 route, a regular walking backpack is going to be fine. Something light, around 10 to 20 litres, will be enough to carry the bare essentials discussed in this video. However, you might want to future-proof your kit and go for a slightly bigger mountaineering style pack. This is the Osprey Mutant 38. I'll leave this pack with the essentials and take it on pretty much every trip. It's big enough so I can take ropes and a full rack for harder routes, and this bag is just about big enough to fit winter kit as well, so crampons, axes, that sort of thing. Osprey have done a fantastic job at keeping this pack nice and light, meaning it won't weigh you down when you're only taking those bare essentials in the summer. This makes a decent backpack, whichever one you choose, the first obvious essential item on this list. Footwear. Correct footwear is extremely important when scrambling. Don't even think about trainers. Your typical hiking boots, which you'll find in Decathlon and Go Outdoors, will normally be fine on grade 1 and some of the easier grade 2 scrambles. If you're getting serious about scrambling, mountaineering boots are the way to go. Mountaineering boots have much more rigid soles, so it'll give you better purchase on tiny footholds, which you'll encounter on harder routes. These boots tend to be a little bit better in the wet, and also can future-proof your kit if you're ever stupid enough to try winter mountaineering. The boots I'm using at the minute are Scarpa Manta Tex. They're a fantastic all-round shoe, but they're a little bit on the pricey side. There's definitely cheaper stuff out there, but whatever you go for, I'm sure you'll see the benefit. Rightfully so, many beginner scramblers are hyper-focused on the idea of slipping and falling. Here's some footage of me and my brother on the Anakigak Ridge in Scotland. It's a grade 2 route that definitely demands respect. I was doing this route in Decathlon hiking boots, as I'd let my brother have a go with my mountaineering boots, as he was thinking of buying a pair. But as you can see here, I'm putting a lot of thought into where I'm putting my feet, as these hiking boots just didn't give me as much traction as the mountaineering boots I was used to. This makes, depending on your route choice, some good quality hiking boots or even mountaineering boots the next essential item on this list. Some experienced scramblers will opt for a rigid style trail shoe on easier routes. These are considerably lighter than mountaineering boots, so are much nicer on the approach. As nice as that is, every time I've done this, I've always wished I've had my proper mountaineering boots when I get on the actual scrambling. Next up, an extremely important thing to consider is your clothing. In the summer, your bottom half is very much your own preference. Some light walking trousers or even shorts work well. Just keep in mind how much mobility you get with these items, as you might need to get your legs up high. Your top half needs a bit more thinking. You are going to be moving, and we are talking about summer, so it's likely you're going to be spending most of your time in a t-shirt or a fleece. But just taking these items would be ridiculously stupid because the weather on mountains change all the time. If you look at any seasoned hill walker or mountaineer, you'll see that their kit's based on a layering system. As conditions change throughout a route, you want the flexibility to adapt. So although you might be tempted to take your biggest parka coat, this is only going to give you two choices: hot with it on or cold with it off. Standard hill walking layering starts with a base layer, which is normally just a t-shirt. Next, you've got your insulating layers. So this could just be a fleece, or if it's really cold, it might be a fleece and a down jacket on top. Then your outer layer is designed to protect you from the elements, so this will normally be a waterproof layer. Speaking from experience, it can be forecast full sun and the heavens will open right as you hit the crux of your route. Because of this, I always take a waterproof layer. That's to avoid hypothermia or a very soggy walk back to the car. However, your insulating layers are going to be more based on conditions and your route choice. I normally take a fleece in summer, but whether or not you take a down jacket is going to depend on the day. As a general rule of thumb, you should always have another layer in your bag to put on than you're expecting to use. You're trying to think in advance. If something goes wrong and you're sat for an extended period of time, you're going to want something to put on. As an example of how drastically conditions can change, on screen is the base of Ben Laws. As part of a 7 Munro challenge, we set off in fleeces, but we were utterly taken aback by the conditions we found at the top. Using this logic, hats, gloves, snoods, anything similar are going to give you more flexibility on the mountains, but whether or not you take them is going to depend on the day. Next up, navigation. I'm going to say that taking a map and having the ability to use one is essential before you start scrambling. If you aren't at this stage yet, practice this on some smaller hills where the consequences of your error are going to be less. Modern phones can be great for navigating, but don't rely on these completely. Phones can die and lose signal, and then you'll wish you had a map. A scrambling guide on your chosen area, whilst not completely essential, is going to make your life so much easier. These guides are fantastic for planning your route both up and down the scramble, and will give you any prior info on crux moves or tricky navigation. Whilst you can find information on the big classic scrambles in the UK on the web, often scrambling guides contain some real hidden gems. They'll take you to some truly wild places, and in some cases you might even have the route completely to yourself. Next, we have some somber but completely essential pieces of equipment, and that's going to be a first aid kit and an emergency blanket. Now, this is not a video on first aid, but the reality of scrambling is that accidents do happen, and what you take might make a huge difference in a nasty scenario. To keep it simple, the function of these pieces of kit are to 1. Treat minor stuff yourself, like removing a tick or patching up a cut hand. Or 2. More seriously, keeping you stabilised if you're ever stuck in a position and you need to wait for mountain rescue. This puts a first aid kit and an emergency blanket on the essentials list. Next up on the list, we have water. I normally take about a litre of water with me on most scrambling expeditions. Depending on the day or your preference, you might take a little bit more than this. I normally take an extra bottle with me in the car and take a massive swig of that before I leave, and then take another big swig when I get back to the car. Snacks are going to be entirely your own personal preference, and are going to depend on the length of your route. For example, if you are planning a full day out on Ben Nevis, you might even take a full meal and a bunch of different snacks to keep your energy high throughout the day. That's going to be very different to a short trip in the peaks. Regardless, think about having a blend of both slow digesting sources of energy and quick release sources of energy. Sometimes when your feet are absolutely burning and you're mentally drained, a jelly snake is going to be the greatest of morale boosts. This puts water on our essentials list, and snacks are going to be essential on all but the smallest of scrambles. With an almost complete list, the next item to consider is going to be a helmet. My normal rule for this is simply if a route needs ropes, the helmet always goes on at the same time. But as this video is aimed at summer grade 1 and 2 scrambling, a helmet could be considered overkill. You won't typically find people wearing helmets on the busy classic UK grade 1s, like Wales's Cribgoch or the Lake District's Sharp Edge. But ultimately, whether or not you wear a helmet is going to be down to your personal preference. The only time I disagree with this is if you're on a route that's particularly prone to rock fall. So if you're on a route that's steep, you're on some sort of chossy rock like limestone, or if you think you're going to be in a position where you're underneath other climbers, considering a helmet might actually save your noggin. And my last essential kit recommendation actually came from one of my good mates, and it's possibly one of the most overlooked items, and that's going to be a head torch. And he basically made the point that this thing weighs 100 grams, there's really no reason not to take it on every trip. This should be in your pack every single time. So if you get lost, or the route just takes longer than you thought it would, or some sort of emergency arises, this is what's going to be getting you back, and it's saved my skin a few times. So hopefully this video has been a decent start to helping any beginners think about what they should be taking on their first trips. Maybe it's even helped some more experienced scramblers fill in some gaps in their kit lists. Ultimately, scrambling has a huge amount of risks and can be very dangerous if not done properly. But having the ability to assess and manage these risks is one of the most incredibly rewarding things, and it'll take you to some of the most remote and beautiful places in the UK. Stay safe, look cool, have fun, in that order. See you next time.
Yeah, it's